Hey everybody, they tried to take him down, but a good dragon always is up for a fight. Let's talk Vanguard post Swordmy. Hey everybody, welcome to Team Absolution deck profile. Today we are talking about Vanguard. You guys have been requesting it. I wanted to play it in a few tournaments to make sure how to run it and make sure how it works. Let's talk Vanguard post Swordmy ban. So, first things first, let's start with our starter. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the changes that happened after post Swordmy and some of the interesting things that you can do now and some of the changes and decisions. Basically, leaving this video, you should have a better idea of how to run Vanguard post Swordmy, in my opinion. Basically, it's kind of the same thing. You want to call dudes, make big lines and swing. So, but if you have any questions, anything like that, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like, share. So, start, of course, with our starter. We went from Tiffany to Millius. Why did I like running Tiffany so much? See, a lot of people were running Millius back in the Jewel Knight days. One, it was a Jewel Knight, which I preferred because some of the cards that I did run like Sicilus, required a Jewel Knight, 3 other Jewel Knights, so I preferred to have that capability. 1. 2, the reason I ran Tiffany is Tiffany can go into soul at any time, which would get me added value with Knight of Twin Sword and with Violinist as well. So those two things compounded is why I like to run Tiffany. But now that Jewel Knights are gone, there is no reason to have it. Millius is a much better choice. GB1, put it in, search a grade 2. This will always get you that Twin Sword. This will always get you the combos you need, assuming you have the CB available. So, that's the grade 0s. Let's talk triggers. So, I run the 6 stand, 6 crit combo for maximum attacks and maximum devastation. So, first things first, I run 2 Encourage Angel. Encourage Angel GB1, I rarely ever use her skill. She goes back into the deck. She can go back on the deck when it's placed on rear guard. You can choose 2 of your units and they each get 3k. It's not terrible. It's good options. If you're trying to hit some kind of magic number that you feel like you can hit, this can definitely get you there. So I respect using it if you want to. I've never seen the value of it out, like the addition, unless like you really need to push for game and it's your last option. But if you're calling a trigger, a lot of times you don't want to go back in the deck, because if you're calling a trigger in Vanguard, it's because you want that power boost that's going to provide. Last is an old tech. We're running 4 of the BT05 OG Sharons. And basically this is a Margle clone that Royal Paladins got that was a stand trigger. And why do I run this, you wonder? Because why wouldn't you? When so many cards actually use your soul, Richard, Miron, Violinist, why not get as much access to soul as possible as using this along with Millius? Sharon is honestly a must if you're going to run stands in this deck, in my opinion. Sure, you can run any other stand, but this at least gives you the possibility of getting extra pluses. And anytime you get extra pluses, you're going to be a happy guy. So, as for the rest, as an homage to the old Jewel Knight days, I still choose to run the Jewel Knight heal trigger. One, look at that kitty. Look at that kitty. You don't want to run that kitty? Look at that kitty. So, I still choose to run the Jewel Knight heal just because, 1, I was too lazy to switch them out with some other heal. 2, as an homage to the deck's roots. For that same reason, I run 2 of the Jewel Knight crit Rochelle. Same reason. Now, you could easily... So let me go into this. So we run 2 Rochelles. I also run 4 of BT01 Lou. 1, to say I have 4 BT01 Lou still. 2, I am a personal proponent that foils clump and foils stack and foils go to the top. This is a fact of card playing. If you shuffle your deck and wonder, man, why am I getting all my grade 3s and PGs? Notice that those are foils in your deck. And they sometimes may be your only foils. You're like, why do these foils clump? Foils clump, and some very, very, very experienced players, you can talk to Singapore about this, to Singaporean players, they can cut to foils. And knowing that so few triggers are foils, that means you won't draw into them or you won't trigger check them. You won't trigger them with it and stuff like that. Which is why I choose to run 4 Lou, because it is super foily and you'll check it and it's great. For that same reason, I could totally understand if you wanted to switch these Richards out for the Outlaw Stride, even if you won't ever use its skill. It's a foil, and I'm a fan of running foils triggers just because foil triggers can get you there. That's a little side tech as far as just card gaming in general is concerned. Moving on to grade 1s. If you watch the Vanguard old deck, I always try and Vanguard to run a 1-of, but this time our 1-of is a Miron, which is a clone of Richard, which we also run 4 of. So we're running 5, basically 6k on call from the deck, draw 1, and the reason why is you need targets for being on. You also have your PGs for targets for being on, but the PG should be your last resort. So this is good for your search targets. It's good to draw cards. So I run 5. 5 has worked for me. I could see running 6 if you needed to, but then you start to wonder what to take out. I like Richard's art over Miron's art, and in this case, art can be a deciding factor. Personal preference can matter when they have the exact same skill. Yes, Royals have 2 Digering clones, but it took us forever to get either one of them. Next, I run 2 Prismy. I run Prismy just because it's a limit break enabler. I can search it out with on the run. Because you're going to be searching out these, so you can search out Richards and the Miron so frequently with Bean on. It becomes not as necessary to search out the Richard on the ride with Vanguard. So you can actually, if you feel, if you're put into some kind of crazy situation where you aren't be able to play the grade 2 game fast enough and you have to be the one that rides grade 3 and you want to put on the pressure, then at least you can discard a card called this, and now at least your dudes are big. Your main Vanguard's big, and he's putting on a ton of pressure, which is nice. Aside from that, it's just good. It's just a good 7k, in my opinion. I mean, it's a limit break enabler. Next, and this is an absolute necessity. I'm maybe not the stamped ones, but if you're going full bling, I run 4 of the Stride Enabler. I only run 7 grade 3s in this build, as we'll talk about later. That's because grade 3s, in my opinion, are useless outside of Stride in this deck in most cases, because you can call so many grade 2s out anyways. But you need to be able to Stride consistently. Striding has to be something that you can do at the drop of a hat, and this helps you get there. Also, I run them in foil because foil's got the top, in my opinion, so therefore I like it. Plus, I've always liked this stamped card. It is gorgeous, in my opinion. So, I run 4 Stride Fodder because Stride is incredibly important. In terms of perfect guards, I run the Seeker. 1, because I used to run the Jewel Knight, but the Jewel Knight one is now in the Jewel Knights. So, the reason I run the Seeker one, and a lot of people run the Unflip, and I completely understand that. It's a perfect strategy. Counterblast, I would put this in the range between a Counterblast heavy deck, a Counterblast middle deck, and like a not using Counterblast at all deck. I put this deck definitely in the Counterblast middle to Counterblast somewhat high. Have I had times with Counterblast as like where I had to be? To me, it comes down to Counterblast management more so than, oh man, I never have enough Counterblast. It's more just like you have to be able to time when you need to Counterblast properly. And but all your strides don't cost you anything. So that's really helpful. The only dude you really see being for is Knight of Twin Sword, Violinist, your grade 2s. Your grade 2s are your CB engine. And so if that to you justifies running the Unflip, to me, that doesn't, just because you already have enough time with Retire against Kagero. You don't want to give them Retire and the ability to get their Dotes off. So for me, this stops that in its tracks, which I appreciate. And yeah, that's really why I use the regular PGs. I've always liked them against the Laurel play and the Dote play. And with Robos finally seeing a little bit more play. Kagero not as much anymore, but with Legend coming out, who knows? It's good to stay smart there. As far as grade 2 is concerned, we run 4 Starlight Violinist. Now, this, you could say, I would like to run the 12k, that's fine. I like Violinist because Violinist has so much utility. Even if you're just going to write it and not use its skill, you could write it and use its skill. Or you could write it and not use its skill. It's still good. You keep it in your hand and write something else and use Violinist later. Violinist's ability to call a grade 2 out of the deck for a generous cost, in my opinion, as well as to this deck in particular, 8k isn't a bad number when you have a full board, and when you're constantly striding every turn, it's not a bad thing. The only time is when this deck bricks, and this deck does not brick often, in my opinion. It is a very consistent strategy. As long as you can stride, it doesn't matter as long as your columns add up to above 21 with the boost from the stride, you're going to be just fine. So this is fine for me, and I run 4 because sometimes you don't have the grade 2 in hand. The other grade 2 in hand to enable a rush. You don't have the bean on. Or your opponent crits you early, and you can ride into this, Soul Blast 1, call the bean on, activate bean on skills. Sure, you're not going to draw 1, but who cares? You know, a 14-line column and a 13-line column. Sure, he can no pass this, but if you hit the stand, this dude's going to stand and swing again. This guy's already swinging 14. This guy can go rear guard hunting. The utility of Violinist to me is so important. He was so pivotal in the Jewel Knight, and while I do suggest that his importance in the deck has diminished slightly because of Beanon and the ability to draw additional cards, he is still a pivotal point, so I give him 4 slots. Moving on to our Swordmy replacement, we've got Sage of Salvation Beanon. I run 4. If you're not running 4, I literally don't know what you're trying to do with Vanguard anymore. This is your Swordmy replacement. This guy makes a 14k line, plus 9. It's 23 with Vanguard Regale on the board. This is no different than the 24, 25 you got with the Swordmy column. This guy can search out a dude that gets you an extra draw. So this is what I was talking about a second ago. Your grade 2 ride can go one of 2 ways. It can go, well, first things first. So Beanon. So just out the 6k, incredibly important in my opinion. This is your Swordmy replacement. This is what keeps the Vanguard engine we know and love alive. The last grade 2 is I run 3 Knight Twin Sword. Knight Twin Sword also is just in a pivotal part of this engine because anything, when you swing boosted, anything you search out, even a Beanon, even if you don't call anything, which I suggest you do if you have the CB. If you have 2 CB, you do this, you call the Beanon, Beanon calls something out. Now you got another 23k column with the Sanks, and this is what kills people. The raw aggression. The fact that your opponent, if they want to guard everything, is going to have to drop anywhere between 6 to 9, 10 cards. You just don't have that. You're just pushing damage in. That's all you do. And so we run Knight Twin Sword because he allows that. Only 3 though, because you can search him out, and he's a prime target for opponents, so just use him sparingly. So your grade 2 turn is going to go one of 2 ways. You're either going to ride Violinist active if you don't have a Beanon in hand, assuming you have a CB, obviously, because you got attacked. You have 1 CB, you ride Violinist, you CB 1, you Soul Blast 1, you call Knight of Twin Sword. Swing with Knight of Twin Sword, swing with Vanguard, hopefully you get a stand, swing again with this, happy. If not, you still got 2 attacks in, your opponent is a little more pressured. You take another, we'll talk about that part later. Let's say they crit you, you are 2 damage, you ride Knight of Twin Sword, you call Beanon from the deck, activate Beanon skill, do that. Don't get the extra draw, but it's okay because now you've developed a much better position where you're swinging 14 at Vanguard. He has to drop a 10k in his hand. Swinging 13, he'll probably take that. You hit a stand trigger, you don't hit a stand trigger, you're still pushing in damage. Pushing in damage is key. So, other option that you can do, if you only have a Violinist in hand and you have a Beanon in hand, if you have both Violinist and Beanon in hand, you only have 1 CB, you're probably wondering, well, what do I do here? Do I call for the Knight Twin Sword? No, in my opinion, you go Violinist, call the Beanon, Beanon skill, get the dude, Soul Blast the one you would have a Violinist to draw an additional card. So this is important, especially if you're searching for the grade 3 you want to ride eventually, if you're searching for stride fodder for later, if you're searching for another Beanon to maintain the rush. It's drawing an additional card is pivotal, and that's important to me. So that's basically how your grade 2 game goes, and basically you're going to stay grade 2 a while, because at least an additional turn, because the main strategy in this Vanguard deck is you almost never want to be the one to ride grade 3 first. You always want to be in the position to stride first. Therefore, you do able to maintain the rush. This deck can, though. With Violinist calling Knight Twin Sword, next you take another damage next turn, you protect your rear guards, you call a Beanon, you call it, who cares if you don't get the draw. You're pushing in damage, forcing them to be the first one to ride. Now you ride, you just explode, and you win the game. And that's just how that goes. But eventually, you will have to go to grade 3. You will have to finish this game out, so let's move on from the grade 2 game. I just spent a little extra time there for you guys because the grade 2 game is incredibly important in that deck. So, of course, we run 4 of the boy himself, Sanctuary Guard Dragon, from the Daigo deck. He's the one you want to ride. Don't worry about his Limit Break skill. He just gets power like Alfred used to. He can be boosted, though. He gets Limit Break 4, power for every grade 1 or less, 3k for every grade 1 or less on the board. He gets power. His second skill is the important one. Drop a card from your hand, search a grade 1, call it. Incredibly important when you're trying to get some value. You can search out the Limit Break Enabler if you can't stride. You can search out a Richard if you want to stride. You can search out a 7k to put behind Knight of Twin Swords, so that's a 16k column for whatever, because that you like making 16k columns. That's important. The second grade 3 run, now I've seen people run only 4 grade 3s. I've seen people run 5, 6, 7, 8. 8's the max. It really is all up to you. I'm all about the importance of striding and discarding and PGing, and I'm all about getting to grade 3 is important at some point, and I just don't have enough luck or enough cutting ability in my deck to actually get to run just 4. So I run 7. I don't like running 8 either. I think 7 is the magic number in my opinion. So I run 3 Sanctuary Guard Guarantee. Why am I running Sanctuary Guard Guarantee? Because it starts with the word Sanctuary Guard, which is incredibly important for your stride deck. And so that's why we run it. The 10k base kind of sucks, but we ride through the storm in that case. Moving on to stride decks, there has been some changes since the Jewel Knight day. Well, since the Jewel Knight deck you saw me do. First, I only run 3 regales. If you're going into the 4th regale, you've either already lost. The game has gone beyond where you can salvage yourself, or there are better, honest plays to do. In my opinion, it is your first stride. I used to have Gablades in this deck. Gablades, I have seen some people run Gablades in their regale decks, and my answer is if you are striding Gablade first, you have already committed to the fact that you don't have grade 2s and you're going to lose this game. And now with Millius, even if you have some open damage because you weren't able to play the grade 2 game properly, if you're able to stride into regale, you can build a board. You can Millius into Violinist, into Beanon, and now you've used 3 CB, but the value you've obtained is now somewhat of a board. And if you rode over Sanctuary Guard, that means you called a Richard somewhere, you call one more trigger, and now you're back in the game. You built a board from nothing. And that's incredibly important with Regale, which is why I appreciate this deck, is that it's able to build a board literally from thin air. You just have to think and manage it right. So we run 3. Sometimes he's usually your go-to stride. If you're striding for the first 3 turns, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to suggest you do this. Sometimes, however, though, it's going to be time to go into somebody else. So I run 2 of Aerial Divine Knight Ammo. Persona Flip, search a grade 2, call it, and it gets plus 5k, and everyone in your front row gets plus 3. So this still helps because this means that your 8Ks in the front row are at bare minimum 11. 11 plus 6 is 17. So you're still hitting magic numbers. You still have to drop 1. Well, the dude that you call with the skill, if you call like 8K or something, if you call an 8K with the skill, now we're talking this 8K is plus 5 for the skill, so it's 13. Plus 13 for the thing, it's 16, so this swings on its own. Plus that, so that's going to cost 2 cards. The other thing you cost is going to cost 1 10k bare minimum, and he still has to PG this. You're still putting a ton of pressure on the board for a second stride. Usually, if I'm going to call him, it's going to be my second stride. Usually, I stride in my boy here, then I stride in my boy here. If I need if I'm playing against Warning or Dote or Dodex or something that has just massive retire Narukami, I mean brawlers that has like some serious power of retire, this guy gets you there, in my opinion. So that's that, and he was a great addition. So next is the one of tech you will practically never use but is incredibly important because in the late, if you make it a late game and you think you can still win because they have low cards, but if they might be able to guard everything, you drop the Samuel play on them. The Samuel is my one-of strike tech. It is the toolbox card. You will rarely use this card, but occasionally you might. CB2, if you have basically a full board, it deals a damage. It's a damage inducer and triggers to activate. But I have used it before. It has come in clutch. I don't think there's anything better to run as a one-of. You could run it like a blade, but then we get into my question of when are you striding into this blade. And then the last 2 stride slots are dedicated to the oldest finisher in Royal Paladin stride history, St. Blow. You might go into it, you might not. Like I said, most games are finished with these 4 strides. These 3 are strict, an emergency finisher that's necessary, and the ultimate one-of tech in that rare situation where you need something different. You need to induce a damage and be able to win the game. So, I'm a fan of this deck. I have been playing it religiously, even back from it was before Jewel Knights. To me, it runs just as smooth as the Jewel Knight days. The only problem now is when it bricks harder because you have 14k lines instead of 16k lines. But aside from that, as long as you're striding and doing your thing and playing the deck, you're going to be pushing in so much damage. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check out our GoFundMe. Check out everything like that. We'll see you here next time with Team Absolution. Peace.